Slenderman has haunted the nightmares of children across the globe for years and years. People were afraid that he would come in the night or to the park and snatch children away from their parents and friends, never to be seen again. Little did they know that Slenderman himself is not the one they needed to fear, but they should be fearing the people who truly believe in him.
Hello, fellow true crime fanatics, and welcome back to the Abyss Pod once again. Thank you for diving into the Abyss with us. We are super excited to share some more crazy cases with you. Don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you listen to so you don't miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter for all the fun updates, pictures, any cases that we think are interesting that we haven't covered or maybe haven't covered yet. If you have any suggestions for cases, we're always open to that. So you can use the contact form on our website. You can DM us on any of the social media, leave a comment, whatever works for you. If you're listening to us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, the little bell notification, so you are always up to date with the episodes that we're putting out. And please leave us a comment about what you thought about the case or any suggestions, anything like that. And without further ado, let's jump into the abyss.
On May 30th, 2014, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, 12-year-old Morgan Geyser had two friends over for a sleepover, and she was only allowed to have the sleepover once a year. Seems weird. That just seems weird. I'll just say that. But that's just the way I guess the family worked. Her friends were Anissa E. Wire and Payton Leutner, which we're going to be referring to her as Bella. That's what she went by her friends and family, so that's how we will refer to her in this podcast. They were all friends from Horning Middle School. Anissa and Morgan had met at the beginning of the school year because they rode the same bus. And then Morgan introduced Bella to Anissa at school, as Morgan and Bella had been friends for the past 2 years. So Anissa was kind of a new addition to the little friend group. Sounds familiar, rings a bell if you guys know the Skylar Niece case. It kind of worked the same way. Bella said she befriended Morgan after seeing that she didn't have a lot of friends because she didn't want her to be alone. So she was just being really nice and, wanted Morgan to feel like she had someone to talk to at school. Unbeknownst to Bella, her two friends had been actually plotting for her death for months and months. According to Anissa, the events that took place went as the following. We will talk about Morgan's perspective since the two's storylines don't really match up. It's kind of one of those where you have to think about how they meet in the middle. So we're going to kick off with Anissa's story. Anissa introduced Morgan to the Creepypasta Wiki page, and they read the Slenderman story. We all kind of know about the Slenderman, but we're going to get into that a little bit later because it'll just make more sense when you get some more of the details in from the story. But as a basis for right now, basically the Slenderman kidnapped children. Morgan told her that she had seen the Slenderman when she was little and then suggested they become proxies of Slenderman by killing Bella. Anissa said the prospect was kind of scary, but it was also pretty exhilarating, she thought. The original plan was to kill Bella as she slept at 2 a.m., but they ended up changing their mind. They then decided that it would be easier to kill her in the park bathroom. The next morning, they got to the park and they got in the bathroom just as they had planned. Anissa said she had read that it's easier to kill someone that is unconscious, so she told Bella to make herself go to sleep. And obviously Bella was like, no, I'm not going to go to sleep right here. So then Anissa took matters into her own hands and she hit Bella in the head and smacked her into the concrete, just trying to knock her out. Morgan then started freaking out about the situation, and Anissa decided to switch gears and kind of comfort Morgan.
After calming Morgan down, the girls decided to play hide and seek. And at this point, it kind of seems like Bella was probably either scared. I mean, I don't know how you can pass off
smashing someone's head in concrete.
Yeah, as like a joke. Like, it's not like a joke punch. It's like, oh, Like, it was just a game to smash your head into the concrete. So I don't know if at this point, if Bella was just afraid or if she was just confused, you know, like I can't imagine what was going through her head, but they decided to play hide and seek, but it didn't seem like all had been forgotten. It was kind of like Bella was being dragged around. Anissa pulled Bella into the woods and told her to lay face down on the ground to hide, but again, Bella didn't want to do that.
Which goes in line with the whole control aspect of like killers and kidnappers. Like they just want to be in control of the situation. So clearly Anissa wasn't doing a very good job at controlling the situation with Bella. She was very like rebellious. Like, no, you're being weird. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And it's just interesting to think like, what did they think was going to happen? Like they would be like, go to sleep. And then she would be like, okay. And just like go to sleep. That just shows you that they had an inflated sense of their power, I guess, over her. But when Bella would not lay on the ground, Anissa pushed her down, basically tackled her to the ground and sat on her. Bella started yelling and screaming for her to get off, and Anissa did because she was worried that people would start hearing the screams and show up to spoil their plan. Morgan had the knife and handed it to Anissa, but Anissa said that she was too squeamish to stab Bella, so she couldn't do it. She handed it back to Morgan. Morgan said she would do it when Anissa told her to, and Anissa replied, quote, "Go ballistic, go crazy," end quote. And then she screamed, "Now," and basically walked away. She turned her back on Bella as Morgan was stabbing her. Morgan pushed Bella down and stabbed her 19 times. Bella said later that during this time, Morgan was telling her that she was sorry and kind of acting remorseful in the moment, but as she was stabbing her. So it's like, how sorry are you? Bella tried to stand up. She was obviously screaming and crying. She was saying, "I hate you. I trusted you." You know, this was her best friend for a long time. So it's got to be very jarring to suddenly be in this situation. Bella tried to get away, but she was obviously super unsteady. She had been stabbed 19 times. She made it all the way almost to the street, but Anissa yanked her back into the woods. Anissa told Bella to be quiet and calm down and that they were going to go get her help, but she needed to be quiet because if she was screaming and flailing around that she would lose blood faster. So they walked away from her, telling her that they were going to get help, but obviously they had no intention of doing that. They just walked away. They were actually headed to the Slenderman mansion, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. Anissa kind of started panicking and told Morgan she wanted to go home. But Morgan said that if they went home that Anissa would spend the rest of her life in jail, so they just needed to keep pushing on. Bella survived and was actually able to pull herself out of the woods onto a sidewalk near a bike path. A passing bicyclist named Greg Steinberg found her on the morning of the 31st, and he called 911. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition and spent a week there, but she did survive and ended up recovering. The stab wounds punctured Bella's heart, lungs, pancreas, and just barely missed a major artery. I think they said it was less than the width of a hair. The two girls had obviously researched a lot about killing. They knew where to stab her. They actually later said that they were going for the quote-unquote soft spots so that she would bleed out faster. Morgan and Anissa were still walking 5 hours later when they were found. Anissa had the 5-inch long blade in her bag, and there was also a super creepy list found in their stuff with all the supplies necessary. I think we'll have a picture of this list on our website if you want to go check that out. But it listed, quote, pepper spray, map of forest, camera, spray bottle, cheesecake, the will to live, and weapons.
Morgan had a slightly different experience than Anissa. She told a different story, and the investigators really had to do a job with trying to piece together what really happened based off of their two versions.
And side note, if you want to watch some of their interrogation, we'll have a link to that on our website. There's a lot of videos of it.
So Morgan's story said that she said that Anissa stabbed Bella first and then just handed over the knife to her. It also said that Anissa had been the one to tell her that they had to kill Bella in order to impress the Slender Man. She said that she didn't know the Slender Man, but Anissa did, and that's how this all began, is that Anissa told Morgan about who he was. Morgan also used the word necessary a lot during her statement and said that Anissa kept telling her that they had to kill Bella, like there was no way around it. Morgan said it was Anissa and whoever Anissa was talking to that chose Bella specifically. During the interview, when asked if she felt bad about it, Morgan said, quote, "I thought about it, but then I decided that remorse would get me nowhere. It's easier to live without regrets," end quote.
When you say, oh, no regrets, that's not referring to trying to kill your best friend.
Exactly. Bella confirmed that it was Morgan who carried out the stabbing rather than Anissa. During the interview, Anissa said that, quote, "The bad part of me wanted her to die. The good part of me wanted her to live," end quote. Which she's literally plotting to kill her. You can't come back from that. You know, it's not like, oh, but like the good part of me really wanted her to live. You plotted to kill her for months.
Yeah,
so the good part of you doesn't matter.
The good part of you is far too small.
Yes, exactly. Anissa said in her interview that she didn't know Slenderman was a threat to her family until after Morgan stabbed Bella, which that doesn't line up like at all, you know, because that was the whole purpose that they were doing this in the first place. So if Anissa was showing Slenderman to Morgan, no matter who initiated it, they knew way before Morgan stabbed Bella, both of them, that Slenderman was quote unquote a threat to the family. That was the whole point of them doing this whole stabbing, if I'm correct. So
yeah,
that statement was garbage.
And it makes it so much worse because it's like, there's one thing, you know, if you genuinely believe there's this threat after your family and you have to do this horrible thing to save them. But if you're just like, I was just going along with it, like that doesn't make it better.
Exactly. And this statement also weakens the shared psychotic disorder MO.
Yeah, which they really try to push later, that they had this like shared psychotic episode involving Slenderman. So that this really kind of negates that whole thing.
It also suggests that Anissa planned and perpetrated this crime under no threat from the imaginary character, which is what we just said. So it's like of her own volition that she committed this attempted murder.
But they don't really bring this up much later, so we wanted to mention it now just so you have an idea for when we talk about how like the trial progressed and all of that.
Morgan expressed that she didn't feel remorse, but said that what happened was probably wrong. That's how she phrased it. Probably wrong. Anissa described Slenderman to the police and said she was afraid that he would kill her family if she did not follow the plan. She had a very calm effect during the interview and said that killing Bella was necessary, but she didn't cry as she relayed the story. So you would think, say, you know, your horse is injured and you have to put it down. Like, that's sad. And you're going to be very emotional about it, or at least I would. And so for her to just say, like, it was necessary to kill Bella for the safety of her family and her not have any type of physical expression of sadness is really off-putting.
And again, if you go watch the interrogations, it's very chilling. Like, her demeanor during the whole thing is really creepy.
Gives very hardcore, what are those vibes, that girl where she was, like, smiled after she said something? What's that interview? She's got short blonde hair.
Yes.
If you guys know, you let us know. I can't think of it right now off the top of my head. But it's like that kind of thing where she was totally unfazed, you know? Anissa was also asking really weird questions during the interrogation, like how far she and Morgan had walked, because she's not usually athletic. So it was like she was more impressed with things that she did that weren't related to it, you know, rather than talking about the issue at hand and being upset because she just tried to kill her friend. And I don't believe at this point she knew that her friend was still alive. So that's just like pretty shitty, just to be blunt. Morgan was also asking questions that were kind of off-putting, and she said what happened to Bella, and when the officer asked who that was, Morgan said, quote, "She's not Anissa, she's the one that was stabbed." Like, just very bland, you know. She then asked if Bella was dead. She seemed surprised when the officer told her that Bella had been taken to the hospital, but then followed up with, quote, "I was just wondering," end quote. She said as she was stabbing Bella, it didn't really feel like anything, and she thought about hurting people before in the past, but she hadn't really followed through with anything. The The police also searched the girls' rooms, and they were able to find some violent drawings and mutilated dolls, as well as internet searches such as how to get away with murder, and I doubt they were watching the television show. And they also went to the library and were checking out books on crime, prison, and mental health. So clearly they knew something was wrong with what they were doing, because they were looking up crimes and prison, trying to figure out if what they were doing was a crime and what the penalty was going to be and what repercussions they were going to face. And they also were looking at mental health because they knew that what they were doing was wrong and that something had to have been unstable in their minds. Like, they knew it, you know.
Yeah.
That just is proof that they knew what they were doing, because they were trying to find research about what their situation was.
So to get into a little bit of the background of the Slenderman story and all of that for anyone that's not familiar with it, first off, Creepypasta is a play on copypasta, which is like stories that are passed around in the early, like, I guess, I don't know, mid 2000s to mid 20 teens. They were super popularized, I guess, on the internet. So creepypasta is just like the urban legends. You know, we all heard them when we were kids, and then the internet comes and you can spread them around even easier. There's a website called Creepypasta Wiki, which is basically a wiki site for all these scary stories and fictional characters. Slenderman was a character that was created in June of 2009 by a man named Eric Knudsen. It was for this Photoshop contest, and basically it went viral after that. The character kind of took on this huge life of its own. It was used in all kinds of stories, pictures, web series, movies, video games. I know when I was younger, I really liked the series Marble Hornets on YouTube.
Yeah, we've talked about that. We weren't friends when we were little. We didn't even, like, we were on opposite sides of the freaking states and stuff. But we both watched Marble Hornets, and it's like this fake online video, but he would post in a timely way where it linked up with the videos, and it was about like his evidence and trying to find out who Slenderman was, and it was really creepy. It's on YouTube.
Super creepy. Very entertaining stuff at the height of when Slenderman was like really popular. And I think they went on for several years. So lots of, like, hundreds and hundreds of different iterations of Slenderman. He's generally depicted as this super tall, faceless, like, humanoid thing with super long arms and sometimes like tentacles coming out of the back. Usually he's wearing like a black suit and is all formal. And the whole story is that there's kind of two different versions of it. There's like the versions where he like abducts children, terrorizes them, like haunts their nightmares, and like I think the thing was like once you've thought of him, like he knows that you exist or whatever, so he's like after them. And then there's also kind of this depiction where he's like this protector of children, where he'll like take kids away that are, you know, in a bad situation or whatever, and he actually like helps them. So there's kind of like two sides to it in different stories. Some people clearly, as with everything, took it way too far, and either, you know, through genuinely being convinced or just pretending to, they decided that Slenderman's real, and that to show loyalty, somebody has to commit acts of violence. So Morgan and Anissa kind of fell into that group, and they were pretty obsessed with Slenderman. On their computers, there were tons of stories about it. They had written about it in like journals and stuff, and they pretty much became convinced, or decided to become convinced, that Slenderman was real and that he would kill their families if they didn't murder someone. Bella had heard the Slenderman stories, and she was kind of fearful. Remember, these are like 12-year-old girls, so, you know, a lot of kids that age kind of play into those urban legends and fairy tales and stuff. I know some of them I still remember from when I was a kid that I was 100% like convinced were real when I was little.
Oh, me too. I specifically remember this movie that I saw where this little creature came out, and he was like brown and fat and wrinkly and warty, and he wore a cape, and he came out, or like a cloak more of, and he came out and he would like try to kill people while they slept or something, and I was petrified that he was gonna come in my room at night and kill me for like so long.
Oh, there was always that one too where it's like the guy had his hand off the bed, and like his
Bloody
dog would lick
Mary.
his hand, and then like one time like his dog licked his hand or whatever, and he woke up the next day and said like people can lick too was written on the wall or something, and his dog was dead, and like that one freaked me out.
Ugh, I know, I still think about that to this day. I think even last night, like I was hanging my hand off my bed and I was like, whoop, pull that thing back, ain't nothing gonna leave me.
Yeah. So they can definitely stick with you. I remember being like 6 or 7 and passing these little stories around in my friend's basement and being like, oh my god. There was one about like angels on the face of grandfather clocks that like came out and killed people. I can't remember the exact story, but I know that
Oh my god.
it like scared, like grandfather clocks scared me for years. But anyway, they believed that Slenderman lived in the Nicollet National Forest, that he had like a mansion there, and after you make your sacrifice he would give you a home in his little commune thing. I'm not sure exactly what they thought, but that's like how the story goes. Anissa said Morgan had approached her with the plan, and Morgan said that Anissa approached her with the plan, so it's hard to say where it originated, but they were both excited to do it. They both really wanted to show their loyalty to Slenderman. It didn't seem like there was much hesitation there. They just kind of plotted it for almost 6 months. So they really thought it out. It was revealed that schizophrenia actually ran in Morgan's family. Her father had been diagnosed with it for a long time. Morgan was diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia and oppositional defiant disorder. She said she had learned that Slenderman could read her mind and he could like teleport and appear out of nowhere. She also said she had spoken to other fictional characters like Voldemort, who had also been advising her to kill people. She had been talking to Snape.
Which I tried to say, no. Snape would not be telling her to do bad things. Snape is good person. I stan.
And she was also talking to a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle and some characters from the show Star Trek, and just... She also had kind of convinced herself that she had powers of mind control and telekinesis. She said that, I think it's called Vulcan mind control from Star Trek. I've never seen it, but sorry if you're a fan and I'm messing it up. But she was convinced that she had like powers from shows like that. Anissa was diagnosed with shared psychotic disorder, which we kind of discussed earlier. Doesn't really fit with her interrogation, but that is what she was diagnosed with. Bella made a full recovery, thankfully, and was even well enough to start 7th grade. So she kind of recovered throughout the summer, started 7th grade along with her peers in September of 2014. On August 29th of 2014, the town had a festival in her honor, and they helped to raise money for her medical bills. They had all kinds of celebrations and like a little fair, which is pretty cool. And just a side note, June of 2014, Eric Knudsen, the original creator of Slenderman, made a statement that he was sad about the crime, but that Slenderman had kind of, expanded beyond his scope many years before. So he was like, I don't really have anything to do with this. And he was sad that it happened.
On August 1st, 2014, it was determined that Morgan was unfit to stand trial due to her mental state, which was to be assessed on November 12th. She was assessed by 2 experts, and both reported having conversations with her where she was hallucinating and she was rambling about fantasy characters. Her family was aware that she was obsessed with the Slender Man, but they didn't really see any red flags surrounding it, which, I mean, if your child is obsessed at a young age with something dark, cut it off. Like, don't do it. You just shouldn't, because that's asking for problems. Because they are so susceptible at that age. It's not even funny.
And she says that, like, her mom said that she didn't see any, like, red flags surrounding Slenderman, but I feel like there were a lot of red flags surrounding other things. And knowing that her father had schizophrenia and he struggled with it,
she should have been hyper aware of it.
It's like there's a lot of things that should have been troubling. And I know, like, parents don't want to believe that something's wrong with their child, but it's helping them. Like, if you can accept and understand that your child is struggling with something, like, ignoring it's not going to make it go away. It's just going to make it get worse.
Her mom just believed that she was super artistic and eccentric and quirky, but not really, like, aggressive. She just didn't really care about what other people thought. She also said that Morgan was seeing ghosts that would attack her as a little kid, which is just another thing that she should have known as a warning sign with the whole schizophrenia in the family. Her mom also said that Morgan lacked empathy even since she was a small child. So there's sociopathic tendencies. It's just... there's so much that she should have been more conscientious of.
Yeah, like lacking empathy as a child. Like kids can be brutal, you know, they can say some savage things, but just across the board lacking empathy is a huge red flag because kids should be very empathetic. Like they have the capacity for a lot of empathy.
Prosecutors even suggested that she was faking, but others said it would be impossible for a 12-year-old to trick the experts, which don't hold anything against children. Like, you know, they're not as sly as they think they are, but if she's having actual mental illness going on, she may believe one thing for sure and still, like, deep down not feel that. Like, her mind is at a battle with itself, you know? It's not going to be working and operating the same way as a normal 12-year-old.
And as we've seen in many cases, and, you know, as many lawyers and people involved know, experts, like that's a very loaded word. Like you hear the word expert and you're like, okay, they know everything there is to know about it. You can't put anything past them, but you can manipulate a situation to find an expert that's going to say what you want them to say, you know? So it's not the be all end all of everything.
Ultimately, Morgan was sent to a psychiatric hospital, but she wasn't treated for the schizophrenia. She was actually only treated for asthma, which is completely ridiculous and ludicrous because if you wanted to treat her for asthma, send her to the freaking doctor. Like, you don't need to send her to a psychiatric hospital. Yeah, that's just, I can't fathom that.
The treatment of her over the next, like, year or so is just insanely atrocious. Like, if she's genuinely this sick and you just don't treat her, you just knock her back and forth between facilities and stuff and don't treat her, like, that's awful.
After she was treated with her asthma, she was just sent back to jail to await her next hearing. While she was there, due to being unmedicated, Morgan allegedly went downhill pretty quickly and was losing her ability to read and carry out basic tasks, which, like, do something. Like, your whole job is to help this girl, so, like, help her, you know? Like, she clearly isn't functioning properly in her mind, and that was the whole point of her going to the psychiatric hospital. And now you see her and she's clearly dwindling away mentally. Like, you need to do something because that is your job. No matter what she's done, you know, it's awful what she's done, we all agree with that, but
she's still a child and she's still ill.
Exactly. She was unable to get a roommate because no one even wanted to be in the same cell as her because her hallucinations were becoming more and more active, more involved in what she was doing. And so, I mean, it freaked people out. She had stabbed someone because of her hallucinations, so they didn't want to be in the same cell as her, which is understandable. And when she finally did get a roommate, she ended up being sexually harassed by the girl, so it wasn't a great situation. Anissa was found fit despite her attorneys trying to obtain reports on Morgan's mental state to use, which ended up being denied by the courts. The attorneys argued that Anissa was not emotionally mature enough, nor did she have enough development in her decision-making abilities to actually be able to withstand trial. But she was still determined fit. Her dad made some comments about Anissa and said that she was always closely monitored and spent a lot of time with family. Her mom said that she spent a lot of time on her iPad, though, watching some questionable things that she found dark but humorous. Her history showed her taking some psychopath tests online and watching videos about violence. So, like, there's another red flag. Like,
yeah, and they were pretty awful. Like, one of them that she had searched was this, which a whole other level of awful. This mom had bought a mouse and put the mouse in a bathtub and then put her cat in the bathtub and had her young son there watching the cat, like, disembowel this mouse to teach him about, like, the circle of life. And she was like, it's just like the Lion King. Like, that's traumatizing for a child, first of all. So questionable parenting on that front, but that's the kind of thing that she was looking up online.
Her mother was expressing some concerns because in the area, 5th graders were given iPads at school and parents were advised to let the children use them at home to get, you know, certain work done. And the family had a lot of reservations about this because clearly she wasn't doing good things on the iPad. She was getting a lot of input from negativity and violence and just things that any person shouldn't be watching, no matter what your age is, much less a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, but giving iPads to 5th graders that are, like, unencumbered in any way is questionable at best. I just think even with parental controls, like, those are so, like, kids know more about that than their parents, you know, like how to just take the controls off. So even that, maybe not the best idea to give someone like their own little computer at that age.
Also, Anissa had a really hard time making friends at school and would just cry routinely. And this just got more cruelty and backlash from kids on her. So she was really stressed, and it's a pretty big deal at that age to have friends and to be involved in things. And if you're not, it's like earth shattering at that age. Not as adults. As adults, sometimes you just want to be alone. Anissa's public defender attorney also tried to move the case to the juvenile court rather than being charged as an adult. But this was a process that they still had to go through and kind of determine how they were going to go about taking this to trial. The governor of Wisconsin declared August 13th as Purple Hearts for Healing Day to honor Bella and what she had to go through.
In September of 2014, Bella did an interview with 2020 to talk about her attack. She said that Anissa had always been pretty cruel to her and they never really got along. They were pretty much only friends through Morgan. She said she thought that Anissa was jealous that Morgan was friends with both of them. And again, that's very reminiscent of the Skylar Neese case, where you have this like new friend join the duo and then, you know, those two want to be closer. So like someone gets edged out of it. On November 12th of 2014, Morgan was again assessed, and experts believe that she had improved enough mentally to stand trial at this point. On December 19th, it was officially decided that both girls were fit to stand trial and things could basically progress. In April of 2015, Morgan's mother started a petition to have Morgan's bail reduced. It had been set at $500,000, and she also wanted to have her moved to a residential treatment center. She said that her daughter has severe schizophrenia and needs immediate treatment, which she has not been offered up to this point. The judge denied the request for reducing bail and for the move because the facility they wanted to put her in was not secured, so they thought that it may be like a flight risk. In May of 2015, Anissa was seen by a forensic psychologist who determined that she had a low risk of future violence, which I just think is a strange assessment to even have. They said that treatment would successfully rehabilitate her and she would be fine going forward. One of the psychologists, Anthony Jurek, said on the stand he did not see any sign of a personality disorder and said Anissa was struggling with her parents' divorce and feeling isolated from peers, and that she got swept up in Morgan's delusions from a place of wanting acceptance, which, like I kind of said before, I don't think that makes it better. Like, if we're to believe Morgan's diagnosis, she's not making this happen, you know, like she is being influenced by like these outside forces that are in her head all the time. Like she's severely mentally ill and unable to make these decisions, but saying, oh, it was like her parents' divorce and like she was kind of lonely, so she killed someone or tried to. That to me means that she could definitely be in that situation again. You know, if Morgan's schizophrenia was cleared up, then maybe in that case she wouldn't be a danger anymore. But if Anissa just did it because she wasn't feeling happy.
Not to mention that Anissa was looking up all of those violent videos. Like clearly she had some sort of interest in violence and interest in like the dark humor and things like that. And like if you're into dark humor, it's not saying that, you know, you're going to go kill somebody. But the collection of what she was looking at on the internet was like textbook how to be a killer handbook, you know, like.
So to say like none of that stemmed from any personality disorder, I just feel like that makes me think, obviously I'm not a psychologist, so take that for what you will, but it makes me think that she's more likely to offend in the future because she's influenced by smaller things. Like most kids have like stressors in their lives. A lot of kids have divorced parents. A lot of kids struggle with like isolation, but they don't try to kill their friends. I think that's something I would disagree with, you know, very uneducated opinion, but that's my opinion. In August of 2015, the lawyers for both the girls tried to get them moved to juvenile court. Like we said, they had been charged as adults. Now they were set to be tried as adults. They had a few points that they were trying to really push. They said the girls could not get treatment if they were tried as adults. They said that trying them as adults would not be a deterrent to others. And they said that moving to juvenile court would not, quote, depreciate the seriousness of the offense, end quote. as said by the judge earlier. He said that if they just put it in the juvenile courts, that it wouldn't seem as serious and it would show others that they could get away basically with things like this, because in juvenile courts they can only hold you so long. The sentences are shorter, and a lot of them can get out at 18 or in their early 20s or something like that. So there were a lot of points on both sides that they thought adult court would be more fitting for the seriousness of it. The judge ended up ruling that the girls would be tried as adults and that they would be tried separately. This was appealed and denied a couple of times. It was also around this time that the restrictions on the media were lifted. So the girls' names and faces were now out there. The story was being shared, and it was passed around a lot. In January of 2016, Morgan was finally placed in a psychiatric hospital and began treatment after not being treated for 18 months. So she had 18 months of basically suffering in schizophrenia, getting worse and worse. Her attorneys had petitioned the court to have her moved to a facility so she could be properly treated. Allegedly, due to legislation, Morgan couldn't stay there, so they started her on medication, and then she went back to jail. There, she used colored pencils to attempt suicide, so clearly the treatment that they had her on was not making things better, and she really needed to be in a facility, like full-time. After this incident, she was moved back to the psychiatric hospital, and a lot of people think that it's kind of just to save their reputation, not really out of like compassion, but regardless, she was moved back there and finally treated properly. While Morgan and Anissa had been incarcerated together, Anissa had basically turned on Morgan completely. She had rounded up other inmates to gang up on her, to call her names, ridicule her, and bully her, which again is kind of like, Anissa seems very, very much like kind of calling the shots. She seems to have very much of the power in that dynamic. Along with Bella saying that Anissa was always like awful to her, it really makes me think that Anissa had a lot more to do with like the planning and the influencing of Morgan. Like maybe she saw Morgan was in this fragile state and took advantage of it. She wanted Bella out of the picture for, you know, having Morgan to herself basically. So I think that is a very viable theory. The police said that they thought Morgan was the ringleader because Anissa would blame some things on Morgan but take responsibility for other things. Morgan just kind of blamed it all on Anissa. But I don't know. I still have trouble with that because I think Anissa could have been much more calculated than people gave her credit for. And I mean, if you remember, they had all those books from the library about prison and crime and mental illness and all this stuff. So,
not to mention that Morgan was very easily influenced under her certain circumstance, and Anissa, if they're saying she doesn't have any disorder or circumstance, wasn't as easily influenced. You know, like she had more of a straight head on her shoulders.
Yeah, and I think if you saw, you know, Morgan in this compromised state, like she's saying that she knows all these fictional characters and stuff, I think just Anissa telling her that she like saw these things too, or that she knew what she was talking about, may have been enough to kind of influence her and like have her get the upper hand, because Morgan was probably struggling by herself for a long time, like not really knowing what was going on, but then to have someone validate your delusion or hallucination, I think that could have shifted the dynamic, just that bare minimum. Anissa did take responsibility for some things, but not the like important things to me. Like it seemed like she would take advantage of things in a underhanded way, you know, like when people apologize to you and they're like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's not taking responsibility. That's like, oh, I'm sorry, like you're a loser that reacted badly basically. And one thing she said was, she said, quote, "This wouldn't have happened if I hadn't showed Morgan Creepypasta," end quote. So that's not taking responsibility to me, you know. That's like, oh, I'm sorry for like instigating it, but like, oh, I didn't actually do any of the bad things. I don't know, I have a hard time believing that. Like obviously I don't know what happened, but I kind of skew a little bit more to Anissa was a little more calculated than people give her credit for.
Yeah, I would agree with that. On April 2016, Morgan's lawyer wrote a letter to a judge and asked if Morgan could be released into her grandfather's custody. He was a retired police chief from Manitowoc County in Wisconsin.
Which, if you're keeping track in the true crime world, another large case happened in Manitowoc, and that would be Stephen Avery. So, grandfather retired police chief, corrupt police force. We'll leave that there for you to do with what you will.
Bum, bum, bum. I didn't make the connection, but the letter pretty much outlines conditions such as no internet access, no access to weapons, and tethered monitoring. So, I mean, I think she should just be locked in a room. And if being locked in a room is just as good as being locked in a jail cell, right?
I mean, the thing is, like, they fought for so long to get her treatment, you know, into like a treatment facility. So it's like, is he qualified to continue her treatment? Like,
exactly. In 2016, a Sony subsidiary started producing a film about Slenderman, which was met with obvious backlash because of everything that's been going on. And it was released in 2018. It was about 3 girls, who summon Slenderman and get involved in the occult, and Slenderman attacks them and their families. So, I mean, might as well hit it on the bullseye, am I right? Anissa's father made a statement that the film was in poor taste and it didn't get great reviews and just holds like a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes, which we all know Rotten Tomatoes can be really harsh.
I know, some of my favorite movies are like real low.
I agree. But, and I feel like I have pretty good taste in movies. Like, I don't like B-rated movies or anything like that. Like, I like good films. So a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes, though, is still pretty low. Not gonna lie. This was probably a combination of Slenderman lore losing its popularity over the years, and also, you know, the tragedy that it decided to capitalize off of. That didn't stop other people from kind of going on with the Slenderman and even looking at this case because it's obviously a really big deal. So in January of 2017, HBO came out with a documentary called Beware the Slenderman. Later on that year, Anissa pled guilty to attempted second-degree murder, changing from an earlier plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. So she finally decided that, you know, she was just going to go guilty. This was a lesser charge to the initial one of attempted first-degree murder. Because she pled guilty, the trial really only needed to decide if she was legally responsible or if she was not guilty by reason of insanity. 10 out of 12 jurors believed that mental illness prevented her from understanding the gravity of her actions. As we said, we don't know really where it goes. It's kind of hard to say. You don't want to tell someone like they don't have the mental illness, but you also, like, from what we've been reading about Anissa, some people are saying that she doesn't have a mental illness, and some of the doctors are saying she has the shared psychotic disorder, which to me just says, like, you know, it's because of another person, which means that Morgan is mentally ill with her schizophrenia. So I don't know. However you want to take that, you can take it as you will. A month later, Morgan also pled guilty to first-degree murder in order to avoid jail time. That December, right before Christmas, good old Christmas, Judge Michael Boren sentenced Anissa to be hospitalized for 25 years, so quite a long time. And this was in 2017. So what, she's supposed to be hospitalized till
sometime in the 2040s, I think.
I think it's 42 is when she's supposed to be done with hospitalization. On February 1st in 2018, Morgan was sentenced to a maximum sentence of 40 years in a mental hospital, which, I mean, I think she needs to go if she was so susceptible at, like, a young age.
If you don't know, schizophrenia usually presents a lot later in life. So to have it present so severely at such a young age is, like, a significant thing.
In January of 2019, Morgan appealed on the grounds that she should not have been tried as an adult in the first place and that she was too young to understand her rights when speaking to the police alone. And in August of 2020, so fairly recent, this appeal was lost. Her attorneys then filed a petition to the Supreme Court, which was also denied in January of 2021, so just like a few months ago. Also in November of 2020, so at the end of last year, Anissa, who was now 19 at the time, had her team file a petition for conditional release and stated that she posed no risk or harm to herself or anybody else. Her hearing was set for March, where all three experts said she had been cooperative with treatment and recovery and all recommended her release, while prosecutors said that she was still a danger. Obviously, that makes sense because, you know, prosecutors aren't going to agree with the defendant. The decision will be made on June 11th, 2021. So that's literally, so we're recording this on June 5th. That is this week. The decision, like within the next week, the decision will be made. So
by the time this is up, we'll hopefully have an update for you that we'll share on our website and social media everywhere.
Facebook for sure. As part of this petition, she wrote a letter apologizing for the pain that she caused and saying that she intended to continue treatment after being released, but that she had exhausted all the resources available at the Winnebago Mental Health Institute, so she really thought like she could no longer do anything there that would benefit her. Bella said she is not worried about the girls being released as they are required to stay away from her, and she doesn't think that they'll break the order. I was just thinking about the same thing, you know, like if I was Bella, I probably wouldn't be concerned either because it was like a sacrifice to Slenderman, not necessarily a personal vendetta. Mm-hmm. Even if they didn't always get along on the same page, I think that's more of an Anissa problem, you know? I don't think that they necessarily hated Payton or Bella.
So just like staying apart basically solves her problem.
Morgan's mom is now a strong advocate for mental health awareness, which we love, you know? We love that people learn from things and learn from mistakes and grow to help use their knowledge to better other people's lives. And she's also an advocate for reform in law. She said Morgan has been taking her medications and all symptoms have been managed, and so she's doing really well in treatment, which is also really good. There's a Facebook group called Support Morgan Geyser, also supporting her and her process of healing. On the flip side, people have also harassed and threatened Morgan's family. It's a really sensitive line to walk because she did do something really, really bad. And it's hard because when you watch the videos and stuff, there's not a lot of remorse in what she did. But we also have to understand that she is a child and she was very easily manipulated.
Yeah, and sending like death threats to her family doesn't help anybody. It just means that whoever's doing that has problems of their own. So I don't understand.
Like honestly, guys, don't be rude.
Yeah.
Don't be rude to people. Like we all have things we're going through, even in crime. Like people who are related to O.J. Simpson don't need to be blown up on the phone.
Yeah.
Leave people alone. You know what I mean? Like, just don't be rude about it.
And her parents have said that they get like horrible messages and death threats and people saying they like hope terrible things happen to them. So like for what? Like what does that do? Nothing. You're not helping anybody. It doesn't help you.
It doesn't help them. So mind your own business.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to get sassy. It just really irks me. This crime created panic for parents across the country, and reports of other attacks were being made involving children that were obsessed with the Slender Man lore. So, like, obviously, if you knew your child knew about the Slender Man, it would probably make you a little paranoid to hear this story happening. In one instance, a 13-year-old girl attacked her mother with a knife after writing stories about the Slender Man. And in another instant, it was a 14-year-old girl who was trying to set her house on fire with her family inside after reading about the Slender Man. And in 2015, there was a rash of suicides on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, which was thought to have to do with the Slender Man, who is similar to a suicide spirit. There was also a reignited debate about the internet, video games, and other media, because we obviously know that every year we get more and more advanced. We get more and more information on the web. We know about the dark web, and it's not hard to find the dark web, you know? So, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't know. I haven't.
It's not hard. You just go on there.
I've actually never been to the dark web, but from like research we've done, it can't be that hard, right? Like people find it without any skill set.
So I don't know anything about this, so people are probably going to laugh when I say this, but if you like know what you're talking about, but from my understanding, you have to download like a browser, and when you download that browser, you like immediately get put on a watch list.
Like incognito mode?
Even that, like incognito mode just means they're not like putting, I don't know, I'm not even going to say it. I don't know what I'm talking about, but for like the Tor browser that you need for the dark web, it's like you just immediately get put on a watch list like when you do that. So I don't know.
Anyway. It's just there's a lot you can see on the internet nowadays.
And kids younger and younger are seeing stuff, you know.
And they're more able to use the internet because we shove iPads in their face
like,
all the time.
Toddlers have their own phones practically, so it's like...
Not in my house.
So there's always that debate where it's like, you know, video games are more violent, and it's like, is that influencing violence? Are like violent movies influencing it? Are these stories? And I think it's pretty clear that it's influencing things, whether or not it's like directly causing violence. I think there's definitely the influence.
I agree. And remember that your parental influence as well. So, like, don't be abusive, right? Because that's going to make your child grow up to do the same things that you do. And like, also, they're watching and learning all the time.
Yeah, they're definitely going to like mirror you, so make sure that you are presenting a good example. And then also there's no shame in taking your child to a therapist or a counselor. And, you know, if you think something's going on with them, if you think they've like had some sort of mental health issue or even not, like there's no shame in doing that and making sure your child is healthy in all ways. Urban legends can be fun stories to pass around, but sometimes children struggle with the difference between reality and fiction, which can lead to dire consequences. Going up my nose and I'm tired of it. I don't like it at all. Hello, fellow true choo-choo. And a passing bikeless. As soon as I said it, I was like, that's not right, but I was like, bikeless.
If any part of you wants someone to die to where, like, you know, I mean, we all say like, I hope you would die. I mean, I don't say that, but you know, people say that. But I think like,
don't put commas.
Yeah, I would like commas. They help me.
I'm allergic to commas.
You literally type with no remorse. Anissa's feather.
Hello, feather.
Hello, feather.